Hello everybody. 2 years ago, I was in Portugal. I spent a very bad summer. It was 43 degrees outside. It was like that for many days. I've seen fires everywhere. At some point, I was driving on the highway with my 2 kids, 7 and 9 years old, and I could see the fire 10 meters from me. I could see the firefighters in the forest fighting the fire. It was a very bad summer. And I don't think the firefighters need to be the only one fighting this fire, because it's all related to global warming. We are all professionals in the digital industry, and we can do things to improve our industry. And this session is about this. We are going to talk how to make things more sustainable. So my name is Vincent Meok. I'm a principal solution architect, and I have the pleasure to share the stage with Maya El-Kurdi.
Hi everyone, so yes, my name is Maya. I joined VMware 4 years ago. I did not see a fire this summer. However, sustainability is part of my daily discussions with customers and partners, and it's really a subject close to my heart. And just in case you didn't notice, green is my favorite color.
During this session, we will go through 3 parts. The first one is about Sustainability 101. Okay, what does that mean, sustainability, when we're talking about data centers and cloud? What are the KPIs? What should we look into? Second part is, how can we improve? How can VMware help you to improve? The third part will be about customers' experience. Okay? And then we'll have some time for the Q&A also. So to start with, Sustainability 101, if that works. Should it? Anything with the clicker that we should do? Oh, the slides are not changing. Oh, they are now. Okay, very good. Okay, and the clicker is working. Very good. Okay, so this graph is basically the average temperature is at 0 for the last 140 years. And what you see is, what this graph is very good at is showing the change of temperature for the last 140 years. Okay? So before diving into the digital industry, we take a step back, and you can see that starting from 1980, you can see the rise of temperature globally. And in 2020, we are close to 1 degree of increase of temperature. Okay, think about it, this is globally. In France, we are, the government is preparing to an increase of 4 degrees. Okay, 1 degree globally means in your country much more, obviously. So 1 degree, 4 degrees, what does that mean? You know, it's not much. So if we look at the last ice age, which was 10,000 years ago, there were 5 degree difference with what we have today. And there were mountains of ice in Scotland, and we could walk to go from France to UK. Okay, so this is the level of the scale when we talk about 5 degrees globally. So basically, it's not a good news. But if you are here today, I'm sure you already know about that. So what is global warming? Basically, it's this. If we start this video. Yeah, okay. So basically, it goes like this. The sunlight sends energy. Some energy goes back to space, but thanks to the greenhouse effect, some of the heat stay on Earth. Okay? If we did not have greenhouse, well, it will be freezing cold, you know. The bad news is that since we send greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, it increases the greenhouse effect, and we trap more energy. And basically, we are cooking. Okay, again, not a good news. What is it related to digital industry? Digital industry consumes more than 2% of the world's electricity. Emit as much CO2 as the airline industry. The growth of the digital industry is 6% annually. Okay, so think about it in 10 years, 20 years, what it's going to be. When we say data center consume more than 2% of the world electricity or emit as much CO2, what do we mean? We mean data centers are responsible of 10 to 15% of the CO2 emissions. Networks, internet and antennas of telecoms are responsible for 25 to 30%. User devices are responsible for more than 50%. Okay, so think about this. When you hear that digital is responsible for that amount of CO2 emissions, you need to break it down by user devices, networks, and data centers. Okay, so data centers, overall, they are responsible for 1.3%, and it's increasing. It's different given different countries, okay? How does company actually account their greenhouse gas emissions? They use the greenhouse gas methodology. So the greenhouse gas methodology basically say any company, they send greenhouse gas emissions, different greenhouse gas emissions, but we sum them up as CO2 equivalent because there are many different greenhouse gas. And the greenhouse gas protocol say, okay, we're going to divide this by scopes. So scope 1 is, as a company, you have offices, you need to heat, you have cars for your employees. So this will be counted as scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions, what is related to this part. Scope 2 is the indirect emissions related mostly from electricity, okay? The way you consume electricity creates greenhouse gas emission, and that will fall into scope 2. And here, VMware can help to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions. The third scope is divided in two. There are the indirect downstream activities. If you are a car manufacturer, you create cars, and then during the life cycle of your car, the people driving the car, they will create greenhouse gas emission. As a company, you are responsible for that, and it falls into scope 3, downstream emissions. For the data center, scope 3 is important because when you buy, for example, a server, greenhouse gas emissions have been created by manufacturing the server, delivering the server, and that falls into scope 3, upstream activities. Okay, so we're going to go through a number of concepts about sustainability related to digital, and this scope will talk about it again. One more concept is a PUE. Who knows what PUE is here? Okay, either shy or you don't know, and that's perfectly okay because I'm going to explain it right now. It's power usage effectiveness. PUE is basically how efficient is a data center, and it's a very important metric. Basically, it's the total data center energy use, so server, storage, network, plus cooling system, etc., divided by what is used by the IT system. So if we take, for example, a data center with a PUE of 2, it means that IT equipment use 50% of this electricity, but then the remaining 50% are used to actually cool down the server and other stuff. So if you consume 1 kilowatt-hour, then another kilowatt-hour is needed to cool down the overall data center, okay? PUE of 2 is actually very bad. In average, in France, it's 1.5 or 1.7 PUE, and the industry tend to get as close as 1, if possible, but the most efficient data center are around 1.1, 1.3. Okay, carbon intensity is a big deal. Let me tell you why. And let me try to shift here. Okay, very good. So here I'm showing a website which is not a VMware website. Okay, it's called Electricity Map. It's a NGO from Netherlands that does it, and it's pretty good. Basically, it shows you the carbon intensity across the world. So carbon intensity is basically how much greenhouse gas is emitted per kilowatt-hour. Okay, what is the CO2 equivalent emitted per kilowatt-hour? And here you can see per country. At the moment in Spain, where we are, the carbon intensity is 122 grams per kilowatt-hour. In France, it's 56 grams. In Germany, it's 347 grams. In Poland, it's 704 grams. In Sweden, it's 22 grams. Okay, so carbon intensity is a big deal because depending on where your workloads are located, the emissions change drastically. Okay, between Sweden, 22 grams, and Poland, you have actually more than a factor of 20. Okay, so understanding where your workloads are actually a very important thing to do. And this website, again, is very well done. You just click on something, on a country, and it tells you why this carbon intensity is like this. Okay? Of course, if you create energy based on coal, your carbon intensity is very bad. This is for real time, but in average, per country is very easy to have. Okay, it's common knowledge on internet. You have this for at the European Union level and so on. Okay, so why am I telling you all this? Let's take a practical example with a Dell server. We have here the full life cycle of this IT equipment, starting with the raw material being extracted, manufacturing, transport and distribution, the usage, and end of life. The scope 3 I mentioned before is everything but usage. Scope 3 here for a Dell server is 1.2 tons of CO2 equivalent. Okay, it's an example. Maybe it's more. It depends of your configuration. Maybe it can be 2 tons, 3 tons, it depends. So even before you start using your servers, you have already emitted, as part of your scope 3, 1.2 tons of CO2 emissions. So the usage, how do we calculate it? Basically, we take the kilowatt hour per year that we multiply by PUE, that we multiply by the carbon intensity. So for example, here, this Dell server, in average, will consume 2.4 megawatt-hour per year. If we take, if we say that this server is in a data center with a PUE of 1.5, and a carbon intensity of France of 100 grams per kilowatt-hour, we end up with a scope 2 of 360 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per year. If this server is in Germany, then it will be closer to 2 tons. If this server was in a data center such as AWS with a 1.1 PUE, in France, it will end up with a scope 2 of 264 kilograms. Okay, so you can see here how different is the scope 2 depending on the carbon intensity. And having this information is important because then you understand what you need to do. Is it better to extend the life cycle of your server, or is it better to actually change your server because you need it to be more efficient because your scope 2 is actually worse than your scope 3? Okay, so understanding your scope 3 and scope 2 is very important to take actually the good decision. Make sense? How are companies reducing their CO2 emission? Basically, it starts like this. Someone at the top say, okay, we have ambition, and that's the good news. And then in the company, at different level, at the data center level, but not only, the application teams, the different department owners, they ask this question, okay, where do I start? How can I fulfill my company ambitions? And it's always the same. It's I need the data. I need to understand where we are at the moment, and I need to understand which things I can do to reduce this current status and improve. And we are going to see how we can have this kind of visibility and how we can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in the next part, which will be presented by Maya.
Thank you, Vincent. Okay, so let's say that you were to start your sustainability journey tomorrow. What are the things that you could do? What are the tools that you can implement? And basically, how can VMware help you? So usually we start with carbon transparency and reporting. We cannot change something we don't see or something we don't know about. So through a decarbonization assessment and some dashboards that I will show you later, you will be able to have visibility on your current situation regarding sustainability. So how much carbon do you emit? How is your energy being used within your data center? And how can you improve that? You'll also be able to establish a green score so you can compare yourself with other organizations in the same industry as you, so you can see what is their carbon footprint and what are their areas of improvement. Then, within your own private cloud in your data center, there are also many things that you could do. For example, we have HPM and DPM features that are available in vSphere, since vSphere 4, I think. And unfortunately, not too many people know about them. But HPM, for example, is for host power management. Usually, many organizations, they ask their servers to run at 100% level of performance all the time. But the question is, do you really need 100%? Or can you tune that? And DPM is for distributed power management. This will allow to save some energy by shutting down some hosts that you don't need to be running all of the time, for example, in non-working hours. Okay, this will help reduce the energy consumption of your data center globally. Data center consolidation. Many organizations today have environments that are underutilized. So with the appropriate tools, you can gain visibility on your physical resource utilization, do some capacity planning, and increase the consolidation ratio of your data center. Network and storage virtualization. This will help you replace large physical IT equipment in your data center with software, and this will help reduce rack space and the cooling needs. We also have some tools to facilitate server upgrades to make them more energy efficient, and to facilitate migrations to a greener cluster, for example, or a greener data center, such as in the public cloud. Speaking of public cloud, we have partnered with many hyperscalers and cloud providers that are zero carbon committed, meaning that they use renewable energy with low carbon to power their cloud, their data center. And they have very low PUEs. So if you migrate your workloads to, let's say, VMware Cloud on AWS, your workloads will be running on high-efficient hardware. And this will help you reduce the number of hosts that you need on-premise and reduce your carbon emissions. And we also have solutions for disaster recovery in the cloud. Many organizations today, for their DRPs, disaster recovery plans, they double the size of their environments on-premise, just in case there is a disaster, so they might use it once or twice. They even hope they will never use it, but this is a big waste. So with a disaster recovery solution in the cloud, you'll be able to build up your recovery environment on demand and only when you need it. And this will help reduce the size of your facilities on-premise and maybe get rid of half of the equipment that you have and that you don't use. And finally, we have solutions for digital workspace to allow your users, employees to work from anywhere using any device. And this will help reduce the carbon emissions related to the commute, going to the office, going to meetings, and so on. And solutions to create a digital workspace platform so you can better manage your devices, manage them in a more sustainable way, and reduce their impact on the environment. So I talked about the assessment earlier. This is the first step to do if you want to start your sustainability journey. So let's focus a little bit more on that. So first of all, the goal of this assessment is to determine where you are in the sustainability maturity model. So this model was built from real customer examples, discussions, and experiments. And it's based on 3 pillars. First pillar, bless you, is if you are an efficient provider, meaning that you provide an infrastructure that is efficient and that you are aware and in control of everything inside your infrastructure. Like what is your impact on the environment and how much carbon do you emit. So it's all about awareness and control. Then you're considered an eco-friendly partner if you have implemented and if you provide the services that include sustainability metrics in the services that you provide your customers. And finally, you're considered a green enterprise, which is the ultimate goal for everyone, and I hope for you too, is if you have integrated and made all of the necessary changes to become sustainable, and if sustainability is part of your business model and not only part of your IT strategy. And as you can see, there are different levels of maturity inside of each pillars, different milestones. And there's kind of a path that you have to go through to become a green enterprise. You cannot directly say that you are a green enterprise if you haven't gone through all of those steps. And this here is an example of a customer's assessment results. So the first step was about virtualization, obviously. So it may seem obvious because we've been doing it for 25 years, but not everyone is at the same level today. This customer, for example, was virtualized 80 or 90%. So for the remaining 10%, you need to ask yourself why is it still physical? How can I virtualize it? And what would be the impact on the environment? Okay. Then it's all about awareness, as I said earlier, and control. So this is where we'll be able to help you get visibility on where you are right now in terms of sustainability and see how much carbon you emit, how much does this application use energy, how about this one. So you need to track and monitor all of those things. Then usually organizations, they start building teams. So they bring people together, sponsors from different departments, IT, finance, executive, and they start working towards the same goal and start building next steps. And this is where we start increasing efficiency, because we'll be breaking silos, consolidating your data center, improving hardware, improving software. So this is a step where you really start taking some actions. And finally, before being a green enterprise, the last step is transparency. This is when you start sharing all of this information with your infrastructure consumers, so with your customers, with your teams, with the head of departments. Transparency is really key. It's really important to hold people accountable for their own carbon emissions, their own energy consumption. Okay, this is the step where you bring all of the stakeholders together and you do some enablement, and you give visibility on a daily basis. Okay, you involve everyone. And finally, you are a green enterprise if you have implemented all of those things, and if you have integrated deeply sustainability in your business model, using green policies or using green automation, such as shutting down your hosts when you don't need them, or defining release periods on your workloads, and, if possible, by using some green energy, meaning with low carbon energy, to fuel your data centers. Okay. So to conduct this assessment, we will be using some tools. For example, here we have the vSphere sustainability tool, which was created by a TAM, a technical account manager by VMware. So basically, this tool here will collect inputs and data from your infrastructure, so your current state, and will report back to you the areas of optimizations and the potential savings by host, by cluster, and by application. It will give you a green score as well, so it's like a sort of ranking or comparison of your organization with your peers in the same industry. So you know what is their carbon footprint and their areas of improvement. Yes. So this tool for now is manually created, but we are working on adding it to ARIA operations, for those of you who know ARIA. And yeah, basically what you need to keep in mind is that it will give you a basic understanding and overall of where you are right now in terms of sustainability and what you can do to make things better. Okay. So other tools that we can be using is the sustainability dashboards that are present in ARIA operations and that are available for download through the huge QR code right there if you want to flash it. So this dashboard here is on CO2 emissions, and it's actually new because many customers have asked us to give the information not only at the VM level, as we have in ARIA operations, but also at the application level and at the BU level. So it's pretty interesting. And if we zoom in a little bit on each section, comme ça je ne tourne pas la tête. So we can see here in the first section is only the object relationships. So we have all of the business units and 3 applications in total. Then we can either look at things from a BU perspective. So here, if we zoom in, we get the list of all of my BUs present in my organization and how much CO2 they have emitted. Then we have the top 10 applications and their CO2 emissions, and on the right, the top 10 VMs and how much carbon they have emitted in the last month. Then instead of looking at things from a BU perspective, I can zoom in on the application level. So here I have my 3 apps and how much carbon they are currently emitting, the top 10 applications and how much they have emitted in the last month. And on the right, when I select a specific application, I get the top 10 VMs within this application, and I can see which VM emits the most carbon dioxide. And finally, I can zoom in on the VM level. So when I select an application, so just before we see that application 3 here is selected. So on the left, we have the list of all the VMs in the application 3, and we have the details on scope 3, scope 2, and the total carbon emissions for each VM. And when I select a specific VM, I can see on the graph the variability on my total CO2 emissions in the last 6 hours. Okay. So this is a very rich dashboard that you can either use it as it is, or you can customize it with your own metrics, with your own timetable. The goal here is for you to get the most valuable information out of it. Then we have the same dashboard, but instead of showing the carbon dioxide emissions, we are showing the power usage. So here I have a list of my top 10 BUs, and I can see which BU uses the more power, the most energy. And on the right, I can see the variability in detail of different power usage for all of my BUs. Then when I select a specific BU, so here it's BU1 that is selected, I can see the ups and downs, so I know when is my energy being consumed the most and when it drops. And on the right, I have the top 10 VMs and how much power they used in the last months. Now it's in total. And finally, the last section for the selected BU, I have the list of all of my VMs, and I have the details on the power usage for a specific VM that I have selected in the last 24 hours. Okay? So these dashboards, you can share all of this information with, for example, your head of departments or your head of applications, so they know the evolution of their power consumption, of their carbon emissions, and they can adapt. So it's all about awareness, and they see what is the consequence of a software update, for example, on the environment. Okay, so let's say that you have done the assessment and you have implemented the dashboards. Now, what are some actions that you could do to make things better? Here is an example of a customer in the financial industry and the results of their assessment. So what we saw is that they currently already have some actions in place to become greener. So first of all, they turn on and off their VDI environments. And we can see on the graph that the number of powered on ESXis goes from 10 to 4. Meaning that they shut down 6 hosts at night and on the weekends. And just underneath, we have the power consumed that goes accordingly with the hosts that are shut down. They also have a low waste policy and multiple data centers with a green first approach. So basically, it's a really good start towards sustainability. They already have some steps, so it's very good. But with the assessment, we saw that they have some areas of improvement. So first of all, they have environments that are very much oversized. We can see in the middle that we have almost 1,500 VMs that are oversized. And well, when we ask them, why do you have such big environments? Usually they say that the VM owners, they have asked for it because they might need it just in case. Okay, but it has an impact on the environment. And if we downsize those VMs, we could reduce by 2,200 vCPUs and 12 terabytes of RAM. So that's not nothing. We also saw that the capacity planning was done manually using Excel spreadsheets. And as a consequence, we have a quite big difference between the available capacity and the actually used capacity. We see 16 terahertz of available capacity, whereas only 6 terahertz of CPU are being used. So again, that's quite a waste. And IO operations will take those numbers into account and show you what you could actually be doing with the remaining physical resources. For example, for this customer right here, they could add 617 VMs to their cluster if they wanted to. So imagine all of the things you could be doing with that and what it would bring to your business. And finally, yes, they have the host power management, so the HPM setting that is on high performance, meaning that they use the most energy possible. This could be changed as well. And finally, they're not using any dashboards, so they lack visibility and awareness. Okay, another example for another customer following the assessment we did. So this here is just to give you some ideas of actions that you could do. 3 things. First one is optimization. They also had many oversized environments and idle VMs. So idle VMs are what we call zombie VMs. I know it was Halloween last week, but these are no good for you. They actually use physical resources, but they're not doing anything. So you need to get rid of them. And capacity planning to prevent adding hosts when you don't need to. And this will help increase your consolidation ratio and decrease the energy use that you need for your data center. Then it's automation. So if you're like this customer, you probably have non-production environments that you don't need to have running all of the time. So one thing that you could do is either shut them down when you don't need them or define a lease period on them. So it's a limited period of time, of duration of your workloads. For example, if you have, I don't know, an intern coming or a new team for working for a new project, you give them a VM for 3 months, and at the end of the 3 months, you ask them, do you still need this VM, or can we delete it instead of letting it live forever? Okay, it's the same thing that you would do if you were in the public cloud. When you subscribe to a service, usually you subscribe for a limited period of time, a month, 3 months, a year, 3 years, and at the end, you decide whether you want to renew your subscription or not to optimize financial costs. So the same applies on-premise to optimize energy costs. And finally, power management. We talked about HPM and DPM features. It applies even more when you have VDI environments because you don't need to have your host running all the time, like in the non-working hours, if the users are not connected to the virtual desktops. So these you can shut them down as well. Okay, so we've talked about the assessment, we've talked about the maturity model, we've given you some examples of actions that you could put in place. Now we want to talk to you about 2 customer use cases, what were their goals and what they have achieved so far. So.
Thank you. Any questions so far?
What dashboards that you have shown, they are available and can be used with any view of installation.
Yeah. Maybe high operation later than 8.0, but yeah, it's available. It's free. You have the QR code here to download it. Okay. You just need to have the proper tagging or naming convention to say divide by BU and apps. Other questions? Yes? Sorry, can you repeat? So how are calculated the carbon emissions? Okay. The carbon emissions, they are calculated based on the amount of energy being... Yeah, okay. Okay, so the question is how do we calculate the amount of CO2 emission based on the carbon intensity, which can change every month, okay? So basically, most of the customers today, they have no visibility in this. So already having this kind of visibility is very important. We can put a static value saying this is the average all year, and that's already a big step forward. We can also ingest this value through API via any batch script, whatever. In the roadmap, we are going to connect to a specific carbon intensity provider information. It's not here yet, but that's coming. So basically, that's the way it is. So, can you give them the mic or yeah?
Normally, you have a data center, or our data center providers are optimizing their energy. And for example, we get every month a chart about 10 or 14 parameters from where we get the energy. And this must be calculated then.
Yeah, well, what we see is that most of the time the data centers take the energy from different sources.
Yep.
Okay, and based on that, they take an average of the overall carbon intensity, and that's what you are going to put into your application.
For example, this month we had a carbon kilowatt hours for the carbon print. It was 135. Instead of 440, which is normally for Germany.
Yeah.
So, and this must in your calculation.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
sure.
it makes no sense.
Sure. So the question is, what is the source of information where you can rely to get this carbon intensity? So, if you have a provider of this information, just like the one we showed, so Electricity Map has actually APIs that you can use to actually consume this data and send it into RE operation. Right now, you need to create this script. It's just few lines of script which is going to take this information from API and send it to RE operation. And in the roadmap, it will be done automatically.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So a few use cases from customer. So one is Orange. Basically, I'll be fast on this. But Orange is a very interesting company. They are committed to reduce their carbon emissions across the different scopes, scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 3, again, is very rare from company, but Orange is actually working on this. And they've done very interesting improvement. And all of this improvement I am showing here, we are going to talk about it tomorrow. Okay, we have a session dedicated to Orange where we are going to go deep into the improvement that they have done. They have improved between virtualization and their private cloud by a ratio of 7, the energy being consumed. Okay, and they did also very interesting innovation using RE automation, where they created when someone is requesting a service, they provide him with information of, okay, the virtual machine you are going to consume will emit an average of that amount of CO2 emission per year, okay? And that's the kind of information that the consumer are looking for. And we, because of the transparency we provide, we actually can provide them in very different places, RE operation, RE automation, or any other places. Again, session is tomorrow at 10:15. Okay, so Orange, we will say, well, what they've been doing here.
Thank you. So another example of customer we've worked with is ST Microelectronics. So I think you all know them. They're a leading semiconductor company. Basically, you can find them everywhere in your homes, on your mobile phone, in your car, in smart cities. And ST Microelectronics, they have a goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2027, meaning that they will be removing as much carbon dioxide from the atmosphere as what they produce through their activities globally. So we've worked with them, we've done the assessment, and they're using IO operations, and they realized that for every new project they had, they just added more capacity. So a new project equaled additional capacity, which equaled additional servers. So more carbon emissions. So their first focus was to increase data center consolidation, have better visibility on their physical resource consumption. And thanks to IO operations, they were able to increase by 25% their consolidation ratio per host without any performance issues. So that's quite a big achievement. They were also able to understand what virtualization has brought to them and how it helped reduce the energy consumption and the carbon emissions within their data centers, and to better evaluate whether a hardware refresh was justified or not, and to establish a green score. So we can see here on the graph that they're presented by the green dot. So they're quite on the top, meaning that they're a big size company with many IT equipments. And they have a score of almost 60%, so they're about at the middle of their journey for sustainability, close to the green champions. Other initiatives they had is to increase their data center temperature. Initially, their hardwares could not support any temperature above 19 degrees, so this required lots of cooling needs and electrical needs. And now their hardware can support up to 27 degrees. So this helped decrease the energy consumption in the data center. They've also decided to add a selection criteria on their CPUs, and now they only use high-efficient CPUs in their servers, and this helped save up to 40% of energy in the data center. And finally, another great initiative they had is that they installed photovoltaic panels on the car parks in sites in France and one in Morocco. So the photovoltaic panels, they not only protect the cars that are parked on the site, but they also help create energy using the sun. So they produce their own energy. They have become their own utility provider. So that's quite a big achievement. And today, this energy production represents 10% of the total site's energy needs, which is huge, and 100% of the data center's energy needs. Also huge. All of these initiatives helped save 10 gigawatt hour per year of electricity and 2,900 metric tons of CO2 of carbon emissions. Okay, and they are here at Explore if you want to talk to them. And they had a session just before. Okay.
Okay, we're close to the end of this session. I have few steps to tell you. First is start with your sustainability assessment. Okay, it's always like that. Where are we at the moment? Where are we weak? Where are we strong? What can we improve? And then take actions to reduce your CO2 emissions. Then, well, there are 20 sessions about sustainability at VMware Explore this year. So go for it. It's very, very interesting. We provide these free courses named Data Center Carbon Fundamentals. It's basically a number of things that we've seen in the first 10 minutes, but it's much deeper. It's very interesting. It's all free. It takes 2 hours, maybe. Super interesting. So feel free to reach this address to get there. And then download the IO operations dashboards. It's really made for that. And you know, well, the few more things that you'll see, I guess, and that we've been through is look at the location of your workloads. It's very important. Check your VMware settings. understand the different population and what can be done. There are plenty of things that can be done. The important thing is what are the ones that bring the most benefits. And again, it goes through an assessment that leads to an action plan. Please take your survey. Let us know if this topic is important for you. If you want to know more, it's important for us to keep communicating on this. I think we don't have much time left for the question, but we're going to stay here. So feel free to come here, and we'll be more than happy to discuss what you are doing and how we can help. And please be the firefighters of the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.